ready for some football. I don't know about you. Who else could it be but your man Lou? Yeah.
The LouieTeeNetwork is powered by MusicHead University. MusicHeads, classes in session. Turn me up. Enroll on YouTube now. Link is in the description.
Who else could it be but me, your man, Louie T? Welcome to this national championship recap live. Number 2, Washington Huskies taking on the number 1 team in the nation, the Michigan Wolverines. Both teams came into the game at 14-0. And it was a game of stark contrast. This game was so predictable. And I wanted to be wrong, and I wanted this thing to turn into a 38-35 shootout. But generally, how this works is when a dominant defense, and I told you this was the best defense Michael Penix Jr. was going to see in his collegiate career. This is not the Pac-12. This is not the Texas Longhorns. This is a real legitimate outfit. The best defense I've seen in college football since the Georgia 2021 defense. And I thought he would struggle. I didn't think he would struggle as mightily as he did, but I thought he'd struggle. I thought he would look a lot less electric than he did last week against Texas. And that was an understatement. But usually when an elite defense meets an elite offense, the elite defense usually wins. That's how it goes. And it really doesn't matter in what sport, specifically football. It's rare that the elite offense trumps the elite defense. Rarely does that take place. So I thought Michigan would win this game. I'm not surprised by the outcome nor the score. These types of games tend to get away from you late. Again, the score doesn't really indicate. This was a 7-point game with 8 minutes to go in the fourth quarter, right? Like that's what usually happens in these types of games is the defense wears on you. Eventually you start to press, make mistakes, you fall behind. Now you got to throw. They know it, and then they get you, and it's good night, right? Same thing that 2021 Georgia defense did. When the Keely Ringo pick six to seal the deal made it look a lot worse than what it really was. It was a close ball game, right? So I'm not shocked by what transpired tonight. Michigan is a physical football team. And I talked about this. I said the team that wins the line of scrimmage, I think I talked about this on the podcast, team that wins the line of scrimmage is going to ultimately win the football game. They dominated the first half in the line of scrimmage game. Both of their running backs, Donovan Edwards and Blake Corum, went over 100 yards. Edwards was the star of the first half. Corum, I thought, finished up the second half as the closer, and they put this game away. But, you know, a lot's going to be made of the two quarterbacks, J.J. McCarthy and Michael Penix Jr., and we're going to talk about both of those quarterbacks tonight. McCarthy, I don't know if there's really any reason for him to go back to Michigan after winning tonight. Jim Harbaugh is going to the NFL. He's going to the Los Angeles Chargers. So going, and that's me guessing. I don't know that for sure. I mean, to me, he belongs in college, if we're being honest. He belongs at Michigan, but this is what college coaches do. They drum up a bunch of smoke. Where there's smoke, there's fire, and they get the hell out of Dodge once they, you know, get their national championship, cause a little bit of a stir at school. There'll be an investigation that they'll get tied up in. They'll probably try to come back and take their national championship away before eventually, you know, cooler heads prevailing. But it's the same shit Pete Carroll did at USC, right? And then before all of the shit hit the fan, he got the hell out of there, never came back. I could see Jim Harbaugh doing something like that this year, but McCarthy, he's a basic-ass quarterback. I mean, he managed the shit out of the game tonight, which is what I felt like he's been doing most of his career as a passer. But there's something to be said about that. But he's no more than Ryan Tannehill to me. Like, I don't see much more than that in his game. You can win with him. Is he going to win you the game? No, that's not who he is as a quarterback. But he'll add depth to this quarterback draft class if he comes out. Same with Quinn Ewers, right? But those guys aren't needle movers. They're not difference makers. So don't really know if they're, those two are going to come out in particular. Ewers looks like he's going to go back to school. McCarthy doesn't really have anything else to prove. He's the winningest quarterback percentage-wise at Michigan. Only lost one career game. That was the semifinal game last year to TCU. He's won a national championship, first quarterback to do that for Michigan in 28 years. I mean, there's really not much for him to do in terms of going back to school. And if Harbaugh's not there, your coach isn't there anymore. I mean, they played without him for, a nice chunk of the season this year. So I don't know if that's really saying much. They probably already got their replacement on the roster should he leave, since that guy did such a good job. But that's no here nor there. I don't know if that's what they would do. They probably go try to get a high-profile coach, whatever the case may be. This game was about their dominance up front in the first half. The running backs really taking advantage of a dominant offensive line, tight ends. Everybody got involved. And then in the second half, the defense made it stick, essentially, right? They scored 17 in the first half. Washington scored 13 points in the game. So they essentially made the 17 points that they scored in the first half stick. Now, obviously, they would go on to score another 17 in the second half. But again, as I mentioned, this was a 20-13 ball game with 8 minutes to go before the huge Colston Loveland catch and run, which set up the excellent field position and then ultimately the Corum run for the touchdown to put this thing, which felt like away at that point with the way Washington was struggling to score the football. Felt like that was going to be an insurmountable lead, up 14-27-13 with 6:50 to go. They get the big ball finally to Odunze, but they couldn't punch it into the end zone. And all of my concerns about Michael Penix Jr. came to fruition tonight. In the biggest game of his career, on the biggest and brightest stage, when he needed to play his best ball to prove to everyone that the hype was legitimate and was warranted, he came out and I think confirmed a lot of people's fears. He's injury prone. He hasn't played top tier defenses. He hasn't been tested like this. And when it finally happened, he looked ordinary. Like John Legend, he looked like ordinary people. And I won't sit here and act as if one game is going to bring his stock crashing down, but he did not help himself tonight. There's a real conversation about whether he's a first-round pick now, whereas the momentum for him being not only a first-round pick, but maybe a top half of the first round. And that still could very well happen. I mean, this is a quarterback-needy league, and you've still got teams like Atlanta looking for a quarterback, possibly Pittsburgh, the Raiders, the Broncos. There are a lot of teams that can use a quarterback, and a guy like Michael Penix can upgrade your quarterback position. So I wouldn't go as far as to say that he's killed any opportunity of him being a first-round pick, but he's definitely opened up the conversation of him potentially being a second-round pick. And again, the medicals come into question. And when you see this guy doubled over, he only was sacked one time tonight. He did take one nasty hit when his offensive lineman fell on him, but to see him, having issues with his ribs and getting up gingerly after getting hit once, and he hadn't really been hit all game, and he finally gets hit. Now he's hurting. That's the kind of stuff that gives you pause with Michael Penix Jr. That's been his issue his entire career. And again, everything that you wanted to see from him, you didn't. And the thing you didn't want to see, you did in terms of the injury. So the injuries, even though he didn't lead the game and he powered through and all of that good stuff, it's a concern, and it reared its ugly head again tonight. So from that perspective, he missed a lot of throws. He looked flustered. He didn't see the field well. All the shit that everybody was touting and giving him all this praise for, and I was like, yeah, I mean, my thing was, the man's been in college football for 6 years. And it's not like 5 of those years he was a starter. So it's not like he's been on the bench. I likened it to, taking algebra 1 3 times, right? Like, I would hope by the third time you see algebra 1, you're ready to smash it and pass all the tests and knock that course out flying colors, right? That's kind of how I feel about them. Like, you're in the Pac-12, they don't play any defense. You haven't seen any real defenses. You're carving them up. You're making it look easy. Now let's see what you do when we put you in algebra 2. You've been in algebra 1 for 3 years. Now we put you in algebra 2. Let's see what you got. He looked like he did the first 2 times in algebra 1, right? And a little disappointing, but at the end of the day, guy can still play. The body of work is there. I liken him to a Marcus Mariota. That's kind of what I see him as, a left-handed version of Marcus Mariota. He can throw the football. He's a solid athlete. I don't think he's as good an athlete as Marcus Mariota, but I think he's a Marcus Mariota type. And you know what? That might also apply to J.J. McCarthy, but I see him being Michael Penix Jr. more of a Marcus Mariota from a college quarterback standpoint, where, you put up all these monster numbers in the Pac-12. Mariota won a Heisman Trophy. Obviously, Penix came up short in second place this year. But when you put him up against a really good defense, you see what he's really about, right? Adunze looks legit. He had a little bit of a struggle out there with one of those corners that looks NFL bound, but at the same time, he did some work and he was open, right? He was open. There were a couple of times busted coverages, things of that nature, where he was able to get free and Penix just didn't see him. And for some reason, you would think he'd be looking number one's way most of the day because that's the guy that's gotten you here. That's who you've rolled to this point. But he went away from him in some crucial spots, and it didn't really benefit him nor the Huskies. From a Michigan standpoint, big win for the school. There's a lot of stuff that I would love to get my hands on. There's a lot. So there are a lot of items that I would love to just get a cart, walk around the Wolverine store, grab one of these, grab one of those, throw it in the cart. Now, here's the problem. It's a lot of minors, boy. It's a lot of minors. Guys that I've been eyeballing for a couple of years, and I'm like, shit, you still a minor, man? Damn. Like, Colston Loveland, I'm like, God damn. You ain't old enough yet? You still a minor? Got me feeling all nasty over here, man. Got me looking at minors. I know I ain't supposed to be looking at minors. I'm looking at the running back. What's his name? Donovan Edwards. I fell in love with him in the Ohio State game last year when he broke off like 2 big-ass runs for a touchdown, showcased the speed. I'm like, that's the shit I'm looking for, right? I want every single dude that has eligibility left but can go to the NFL. I'm like, bro, you ain't got no reason to go back. I'm like, come on, Donovan. I'm like, Dave Chappelle as Rick James. Come on, man. I could use one of them type dudes, one of them home run threats. I got a thing for Mikey Sandstrell. Like, fell in love with him in that same Ohio State game last year. And, that's when I learned the story. Initially was a wide receiver, made the transition over the corner. Then he was a safety, and he's a hell of a slot. Like, he is exactly what I'm looking for. Like, if you told me I had one option of all the Michigan players that I could take, give me Mikey Sandstrell. Give me him. That's the one I'm looking for. That's the guy. That's the Mike Hilton, right? That's the Kenny Moore, right? That's the quintessential NFL slot right there. Give me him. He was fantastic tonight. excellent. They had the one blown coverage where he looked like he was trying to communicate to the guy outside, and the ball got snapped before he could get on the same page with him, and Odunze ran right by him, but he was in lockstep against the slot receiver that's really good for Washington pretty much the entire night in his hip pocket. He's a leader on that team. He's a short tackler, ball skills, because he's ex-receiver. Like everything you could want in a nickel, Mike Sandstrell is literally that. Yeah, there's quite a few items that are really nice. The defensive tackle, 55, minor, right? Saw him in the Alabama game, in the playoff game, and I was like, okay, yeah, he wrecking shop, right? He's a big bully in there. He had the hit on Penix Jr. where he took one lineman, threw him out the way, took the next lineman, took the guard, tossed him aside, took the center, rolled him back into Penix Jr. and knocked him down. Yeah, he's a bully, right, inside. Yeah, they were flying around defensively. You know, sans for the first possession of the game where the safety came up and missed the tackle. They were short tacklers all night. They were flying around. Wasn't a lot of yards after catch. They had Penix seeing ghost out there flying around. There were open receivers. I'm not telling you that there wasn't places to go with the football. What I'm telling you is he just struggled because he wasn't used to this type of speed. What did I tell you about? Michigan didn't get a ton of pressure with their front four. That's not how they're built. That's not who they are. But those linebackers and that secondary, they fly around. They're fast. They're athletic. And they make it feel like there are 13 guys on the field. When you got guys flying around like that, when they came on the blitz, they sped him up. He didn't look athletic tonight. He didn't use his legs. J.J. McCarthy used his legs. He was pinned up back against his own goal line, and you knew he was going to run because even when he dropped back, he tucked that baby, and he wanted to go, but the hole hadn't opened up yet, so he had to wait a little bit longer. Then the hole opened up, and he took off. I was waiting for Penix to use his legs to keep that defense honest, and he never did it tonight. He didn't have to, though, and that's a good offensive line in front of him, and for the most part, they kept him clean. He just didn't deliver the football. He was not comfortable, and it showed. And that, again, credit that Michigan Wolverines defense. This is who they've been all season long, right? How can you respect a quarterback that in a game there was, what did they say, 26 straight runs, 36 straight runs against Penn State, whatever it was? How can you respect a QB? Now, some of that could be weather induced. I didn't watch that game, so I'm not going to sit here and act as if I know the whole storyline behind that. It could have been a nasty weather game. Penn State could have been struggling stopping the run. Anything could have happened. McCarthy could have had something wrong with them, and they had to turn to the run game. I don't know. That's a hell of a number. Not one play action fake, not one boot, not one misdirection, nothing. It's just straight runs. Yeah. Dominant performance by a dominant team in a season where everyone wanted them to meet their demise, wanted them to be cheaters and all of that good stuff. Harbaugh wasn't there for 4 or 5 games or whatever it was, and they still won. And what do you got to say now, right? It'll be interesting to see what happens. We're going to see some conference realignment next year. We'll see playoff expansion next year. So the landscape of college football changes significantly next season. The Pac-12 essentially ceases to exist next year. All these teams will be scattered around, going to their respective new conferences. We'll see how those teams fare. What I will say about that is that a lot of these quarterbacks and some of these players who have been getting by because they played in a lesser conference, now that angle won't be allowed to be utilized. Like, you can't use that as a crutch to not like a player or to like a player, right? Can't say he didn't play in a conference with defense because a lot of these teams are going either to the Big Ten or they're going to the SEC. Now, if you go into the Big 12, same shit applies, right? Same thing applies. No difference. But if you're going to one of these big-time Power 5 conferences where they play defense, where they're physical, where they're fast, where they're athletic, if you put up numbers and you do what you're supposed to do against that competition, then there's no excuse. You can't say, well, it was the Pac-12 or it was the ACC. You can't make up any excuses. They balled out in the best conference in the country or the second best conference in the country. So I think that'll help some of these players. It'll hurt some of these guys that put up massive numbers because they didn't play against some of that upper echelon talent. But when you talk about the elites, this is the platform that they're looking for, and this is the platform that they shine on. When Joe Burrow got this opportunity back in 2019, he shredded Clemson, shredded them on the biggest stage there was, left no doubt why he was the best player in college football all season long, why he was the best player in the best conference all season long, went through a gauntlet schedule, one that I had never seen a team go through, went on the road and beat Alabama, all of that good stuff. And then put an exclamation point at the end with the national championship game against Clemson. Took A.J. Terrell and put his ass in the blender, right? That's what you do when you're that guy, when you're him. Penix had an opportunity. Penix Jr. had an opportunity, not necessarily to put himself on that stage, on that platform, but he had a chance to announce himself as, hey, I'm legit. When you mention the top three, slide my name right on in there with them. You can put me at the back if you like. But when you start mentioning Caleb Williams, Drake May, and Jaden Daniels, make sure you slide my name right here in the back end of that thing. Don't forget about me. I'm trying to get into that top 10 too. There's some teams that need a quarterback up in there. Atlanta's sitting right up in there at 8. Don't forget about me. He had a chance to do that tonight. Now we like really pushing him away from them other three. Like, yo, back up. Just a taste. Just a taste. Just back up a little bit. Like, just back up. So disappointing effort for Michael Penix Jr. But again, that's a well-coached Michigan defense. And they've been waiting for this moment. You know, they got to the playoffs last year. They were the better team. They lost to TCU. They had no business losing that game. They were the better team. We would have got a much better national championship game than the beatdown that we witnessed last year, 62-7 or whatever the score was. This felt like the San Antonio Spurs the year they lost to the Heat on that Ray Allen 3. This felt like that. They were on that mission that next year, and you knew they were going to win the NBA championship. There was no way they weren't going to get back to the finals and win it this time. That's kind of how Michigan felt, like a team on a mission, a team of destiny. Got beat last year, felt like they shouldn't have lost that game, and nothing was going to stop them from getting back to the national championship and getting it done this year. I tell you this much, had they played Georgia, it would have been interesting. Had they played Georgia, I don't think Georgia's quarterback is all that good, and I still think their defense could have gotten to him and made him uncomfortable. But Georgia's defense would have done the same thing to J.J. McCarthy. That's the difference. And I don't think Corum and Donovan Edwards would have been running all over the damn field on Georgia's defense. But that's nor here nor there. Congratulations to the Wolverines, man. It's been a long time since they won a national championship. Long ass time. What they say, 97? Charles Woodson? Zoinks! Good for them. And this is outright. I think they said that they had split that championship with Peyton Manning and that Tennessee Vols team in 97. No splitting of anything this year. You the champs by yourself. Anyway, I digress. Let's get to the comment section, see how you guys feel. Video channel. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. Right. So when we watching you break down the all 22 on Drake May, I doubt you see me do that. I quit trying to do the college football thing. It's like they got the college football stuff in a vault locked up, and you got to be in like a secret society to have access to it. I had access to it one time because I knew somebody that knew somebody that knew somebody, and then that guy got fired. So he lost his privileges and they locked him out, and now I got nothing. So I don't even try no more, man. I tried for years to get my hands on some of that stuff. It's tough. Ethan Dykes, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Who writes 73 cost Washington the entire fourth quarter. He was awful. You talking about the right tackle? Got called for the holding penalty on the 35-yard completion to a Dunze that was negated, or 32 yards, I think it was. That was negated by his holding penalty. Yeah, he had a rough go of it in the fourth quarter. He was getting beat, but like, you can't put it on him. Like, they weren't good, and there were opportunities that Michael Penix Jr. left out on the field. Guys running wide open, he's not seeing them. Guys running wide open, he's missing them. You know, he had happy feet back there when there was pressure. You know, you could tell he was being affected by it. And yeah, it wasn't a good night. And when it's not your night, those types of things happen, right? You get the pass interference penalty, right? And 73 gets called for holding again. You know, when it's not your night, it's not your night. Frankie, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB, who writes, for 25 years, I've watched Michigan football with my stepdad and brothers. Finally seeing us win the big one is a crazy special feeling. Winning a championship, whether you're a part of it or you're a fan, which makes you feel like a part of it. Because believe it or not, even though we're fans, we go through the ups, the downs, the trials, the tribulations. We eat, sleep, breathe, all of this. So when you win, when they win, we win, right? There's no feeling like it. There's no feeling like winning, your team winning the championship. So my order of fandom, and I think I've told you this before, is clearly the Commanders. They're 1, and it's not close. 2 isn't even close, right? My 2 is probably, I think I would really like to see my Memphis Grizzlies win. I really, really have a strong attachment to this group in particular. Like, they used to be 3 behind the Braves with Mike Conley and the core 4, but with this group, with Ja, Jaren, and Dez, like, they've ascended to 2. I would really like to see them win an NBA title. I grew up with them, right? Like, I watched these boys as puppies come up in the game to where they are now, where Dez could be an all-star. Jaren was one last year, and Ja easily could have been the face of the NBA right now if he could get out of his own way, right? They're 2. The Braves are 3. Duke basketball is 4. And Notre Dame Fighting Irish football is 5. So I don't know where Michigan football ranks for you, but if anybody wins in that group that I just named of 5, I'm going to be ecstatic. But could you imagine if 1 wins, my top team gets a chip? I've seen the Braves win multiple championships in my lifetime. They just won one 2 years ago, right? They've spoiled me. When they don't win the chip, I'm disappointed because they're that good. I would kill for the Commanders to be on that level. The Grizzlies are getting to that point. We haven't made it to a Western Conference Finals, and if we can stay healthy and just get just concentrate on basketball. I actually like this team that we have now, but we're so banged up, right? But that's another story for another day. Congratulations to you as a fan watching Michigan football for a quarter of a century and finally seeing them win a national championship. And I'll just give you this piece of advice. They're going to try to come for your national championship. They're going to try to demean it. They're going to try to say that you were cheaters and this, that, and the third. To hell with all of that, all right? This is for the struggle, right? This is for the 25 years you've been watching with nothing to show for it. To hell with all of that, man. Celebrate, goddammit. Y'all went 15-0 and won a national chip, won a natty. Man, go celebrate that, man. Have fun. Ayub Matan, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Who writes, what's good, Lou? What's good, Ayub? I'm here in Kenya, and I get to on Twitter to see Giants fans happy Penix stunk it up. Looks like DJ in year 6, 7. I don't know this time. We're regressing. Hey, well, see, this is what happened. Bad Dog was the one tooting Michael Penix Jr.'s horn. So the the Daniel Jones stands out there wanted to see Penix fail so that guys like Bad Dog, who've been tooting his horn, would shut up and say, so they could say, see, he's not better than Daniel Jones. Sort of like the Howell stands over here probably were rooting for the same thing, so they could go, he's not better than Sam Howell, right? At the end of the day, we know what Daniel Jones is as a quarterback, just like we know what Justin Fields is as a quarterback. When you've had a large enough sample size, it's hard for you to shake that stigma. It's hard for you to shake what you are already. You know, it's not that those guys can't get better and become, you know, much better versions of themselves, but they can't become Patrick Mahomes, or they can't become Joe Burrow or Josh Allen. Those guys don't have that in them. We've seen that already. The best they could be is somewhere in that Derek Carr, you know, I don't even like Kirk Cousins has had some seasons, man. Like, I don't even like putting him in the Derek Carr to me is meh. Like, he's the best of the meh quarterbacks, like slightly above average. This is the ugly part of being a fan. Like this setting that you're in right here as we get ready to head into the offseason. This is the ugly part, because now this is where everybody getting their feelings about their favorite quarterback or the player that they want the team to take in the draft. Shit gets ugly now. People start calling each other names and telling people, you don't know football. Yo, dumbass, this, and it gets ugly over, hey, who should we take at 5? Like, bro, why y'all getting mad over who the team should take it at, you know, number 5? In the Giants case, number 6. Like, bro, why you mad? You know, like, that should be hilarious to me. I get a kick out of it, but anyway, I digress. Yeah, he wasn't good, and I'm gonna ask Bad Dog about it. Speaking of which, we are going live tomorrow night, 8 p.m. Super Friends. I'll be promoting it tomorrow. So just wanted to throw that out there. If you aren't doing anything tomorrow night at 8, hop over to the YouTube channel, NFCE Super Friends. We got a lot to talk about, right? All hail Chevy. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Who writes, Washington needs to man up and take Harbaugh. They was bully. That was bully ball. Hashtag HTTR. Well, from what I've heard, and again, I don't know how true it is, but I don't think Washington's interested in Jim Harbaugh, first and foremost. Neither am I. I'll just say that. But he's a West Coast guy, right? Like, if he's going back to the NFL, he wants to go back to the West Coast. You know, Michigan is his alma mater, so he was cool going to Michigan. But if you look at his career, he coached at the University of San Diego. He coached at Stanford, and he coached for the San Francisco 49ers. Like, yeah, his playing career in the NFL was in the Midwest. He played for the Chicago Bears. He played for the Indianapolis Colts. Those were the two most notable places he's played, and the best football that he played in his career came in those two places, Indy being the most notable. And then his college football was at the University of Michigan. So he was a Midwest guy from a career standpoint playing, but coaching, as you get older, I think he likes the warm weather. I think he wants to be out on the West Coast. And the two places that we consistently hear attached to his name are the Vegas Raiders and the Los Angeles Chargers. I think personally the Chargers are the best fit for him. I think that's where he ultimately wants to go. And so I think that's where he'll end up if he does jettison the Michigan Wolverines for the NFL. But you didn't hear that from me. So we'll see what happens. Washington, I don't think, is in play for Jim Harbaugh. Period. King of the Bluegrass. I was waiting to hear from you. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB, who writes, Penix Jr. is not the answer. He is pedestrian under pressure, and he stayed there, receivers on one side of the field, and he stared down their receivers on one side of the field. Way too much. I still like him, but I don't love him. And I think that's kind of how I feel about him and Jaden Daniels in particular. I have to watch Jaden Daniels more. I'm not going to lie, but I've watched a lot of SEC football. I've watched a lot of Jaden Daniels. I watched him at ASU when he was with Herm Edwards. I watched him at LSU, and, you know, he did some really good things this year. Of course, he won the Heisman Trophy, but and there were some really good throws, and then there were some throws that, you know, weren't all that great, but turned out to be touchdowns anyway. I think that he's a gifted athlete, but I've got questions with Jaden Daniels. I got to check on Drake May, because I'm not going to lie to you. I didn't watch a lot of UNC football. I didn't watch a lot of UNC football. I've seen enough Drake May to be dangerous, but not enough to actually talk with a clear mind and an open heart. So I got to watch more of him. But Penix Jr., I've watched it. I've followed his career pretty closely because he got on my radar when he went toe-to-toe with Justin Fields at the Horseshoe back in 2020. So from that point on, he was on my radar. So, yeah, really disappointed in him tonight. Ethan Dykes, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Ethan Dykes writes, best player on the field for you tonight. Boy, it's 1A, 1B for me with Mike Sammerstrill and Blake Corum were the two best players on the field for me tonight. And Corum, I think, just gets overlooked. Like, I thought he should have won the most valuable player of the Rose Bowl, but that it is what it is. He did it again tonight. He's been the rock. The reason JJ McCarthy is 27-1, whatever his record is because of Blake Corum. Like, Corum has been the heart and soul of that team, and part of the reason they didn't beat TCU last year is because he got hurt last year. So if he doesn't get hurt, they probably win that TCU game, and they probably go to the national championship. And I think they still lose to Georgia, but they compete. It's a much more competitive game. He's a really good running back. I think he's going to be a really good back at the next level. I don't know if he's elite. I think he has a chance to be really good at the next level. But Mikey Sammerstrill is the guy. I know a nickel when I see one. He's the one. Boy, we need one bad. I'm looking at him like, whew, we could use one of those. Boy, we could use one of those. Smack City, thank you for the super chat. And you know what else too? you'd have to look at some of those Michigan offensive linemen because they got some big boys up front. You probably have to look at a couple of those dudes too, but the ones that stood out to me the most were those two individuals in particular. Love me Colston Loveland, but he's still a minor, right? Like not even. And that corner that they had out there opposite of Adunze, I got to watch some more of him. He's big, he's long, and he's athletic. That's a great combination when you're looking for a corner. Smack City, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Who writes, trade a second and a first to take CW, Caleb Williams. Win-win, Bears get their second round pick back and get whoever they want at the top end of the draft. We solidify QB. But that's not going to be enough to get it done. Like, you got to understand that if you're coming up to one, I've already told you and made this argument. If you're going up to one, if the Bears are going to hold on to Fields and look to make a move, they're not giving away the number one overall pick. You're going to have to outbid other teams that want Caleb Williams as well. We're not the only team that's interested in Caleb Williams. The New York Giants, the New England Patriots, or for that matter, any of the quarterbacks. Somebody else be like, to hell with Caleb Williams. I want Drake May. But in order to get him, you got to go to one because you're not sure what the other teams are going to do. And if you're not at two, you're not in a position to make that call. Like if you're the Giants, you're sitting at 6, but you want Drake May, you might not have to go to 1 to get him. You could go, but guess what? Washington isn't giving you 2. So you can't go to 2. You can't go to 3. Because if you go to 3, right, and if I'm not mistaken, New England's at 3, but if you go to 3, Drake May could be gone if that's the one you want, right? So you can't go to 3. You'd have to go to 1 just to ensure that you get the guy that you want. So again, I can't stress this enough. You're going to have to give up a pretty big haul to get to number 1. First of all, it's the number 1 pick in the draft, people. This is not the 7th pick in the draft. We're talking about the number 1 overall pick. I don't care if you're at 2. There's a massive gap between being able to take the very first player in the draft, any player in the draft, whomever you think is the best player, you get to pick them versus taking the second best player in the draft. There's a massive difference between 1 and 2, and you're going to pay for that. Then you add into the fact that it turns into a bidding war because there's Washington at 2, New England at 3, the Giants at 6, the Falcons at 8. I don't know how far back the Bears are willing to go. They went all the way back to 9 last year. There wasn't a Marvin Harrison Jr. available last year, but they went all the way back to 9 last year. So you can't count out Atlanta at 8. You can't count out the Giants at 6. They probably would rather do business with Washington or New England at 2 or 3 because that still puts them in front of Arizona. And knowing that 1, 2, and 3 are all going to go quarterback, or knowing that 1 and 2 are going to be quarterbacks, if you trade to either Washington or New England and you just go to 3, you know you're still getting your guy at 3. You're moving back, picking up a bunch of picks, and you're still getting your guy, right? Or as I said, if you're smart, if you're the Bears, you could double dip, right? You could be greedy and move back 1 spot with Washington and then hit the Patriots up and say, hey, you want this quarterback? Because I got the Giants on the line. I got the Falcons on the line. What you trying to do, man? Hey, you better come up here and get this 2 up off me. I give it away. Don't push me. And then if you might be able to smack Washington in they upside their head and then bust the dang on Patriots side their head and still get Marvin Harrison Jr. That's what I would be trying to do. But again, that's easier said than done, right? You're not. Long story short, you're not getting the number 1 overall pick for a swap of the 1s and a 2. That's crazy talk. King of the Bluegrass. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Double up. Thank you for doubling up. Who writes? Jesse Minter should be our next defensive coordinator. I can dream. Dream. Dream, dream, dream. Did a hell of a job. And what is interesting is you never know. If you hire Mike McDonald, you never know who the hell he's bringing with him. He could reach back to the collegiate ranks because that's where he came from. A lot of Michigan ties. And you never know. He could reach back and grab a guy like that to bring with him. You just never know, right? Tizzy Bang. Thank you for being a member for 27 months. Who writes, been mocking Donovan Edwards and Mike Sainristil to us since about week 10. Probably can't get them late in the draft anymore. You weren't going to get them late in the draft anyway. You weren't going to get them late in the draft anyway, especially Sainristil. Now, Donovan Edwards had a down year. So without this natty, you might have been able to hide him to the 4th round or so. But he was going to run fast at the combine. He was going to shine a light. And then all you was going to have to do was go back to that Ohio State game from 2022. And somebody was going to take him in the 3rd round. You know. And I still think he's a 3rd round pick when it's all said and done. My question is, can he catch? I don't know if he can catch the football or not. Does he have natural hands? But he can run. That's for sure. I think Mikey might have messed around and made himself an early 2nd round pick, an early day 2 pick. I don't know if he's going to – I don't think he can sneak into the 1st. Because, you know, this is what everybody do this time of the year. It's about to be 70 dudes going in the 1st round. You know how I don't do that. I don't like to play those games. He's a 2nd round pick. He's a 2nd round, an early 2nd round pick. Where did Elijah Molden go from Washington, from UW to the Titans? What pick was he? Somebody look that up. I think he was a 2nd round pick. That's my guess. Probably a mid to late 2nd. Sainristil is better than him. So I'm thinking early 2nd, like 38, somewhere in that neighborhood. We'd have to spend that Bears 2nd rounder on him if we wanted him. But if he was still there, which I think he could be still there. Ayub Matan, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Double up. Thank you for doubling up. Who writes, McMillan looked like the Alec Pierce no jiggle stiff. Yeah, he's a dangerous slot, right? I watched him and he's done some good things, but like you said, it's north with him, you know. It ain't no east and west, right? It ain't no making nobody miss. It ain't no stick your foot in the ground. It ain't no dandruff being given out. No head and shoulders, right? Yeah, nah. That's the kind of vibe I'm getting from him too. Like, yeah, you can still win with a guy like that, but you want your guy in the slot to have a little shimmy, a little something, right? He feel a little stiff to me too. I'm with you on that. Barry Curtis, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Who writes, Caddy's Cut Up has the all 22 college games. It's like $1 to $5 a month though. Send me the link to that. I'd pay, $5 a month for 3 months for the all 22s to have the look at that. I definitely do that. It's worth it. King of the Bluegrass, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. King of Bluegrass writes, but anyway, go Blue. And Lou, when are those Fighting Irish going to get their championship? It's been long for them as well. bro, here's the difference between my institution that I root for and the one you root for. There is a higher academic standard, one that Lou Holtz used to be able to maneuver around back in the day when he would get the Tim Browns, and not to say that these guys aren't smart, but he would get the Tim Browns and the Ricky Waters and, you know, the Jerome Bettises of the world, you know, the Rocket Ishmaels and all the stars that we had back in the day, right? You're just not getting, that's why Chip Kelly left. You're not getting that caliber of athlete at Notre Dame anymore. You're just not. It's a higher institution of learning. It's a Catholic school. It's in South Bend, Indiana. What kid wants to go and live in South Bend, Indiana, when you can go to Georgia, or you could go to Florida, or you could go to, you know, Ohio State, Michigan, etc., etc. So we essentially have one hand tied behind our back. Not to mention, we can't find a 5-star, hell, give me a 4-star quarterback to save that's any good to save our life. All our quarterbacks are 6'0" like Ian Book, and you know the kid that was just there, Tyler Buckner, stunk. All of them look the same. Tyler Buckner's like 6'1", 6'2", maybe max, but he's short quarterback, just like Ian Book was, mobile, but you know, doesn't have an arm, isn't any, like, that's how our quarterbacks look. We got to get lucky and get somebody in the portal and have him have a crazy year for us to have a shot. And I thought we had a chance this year with a dude that's been in college for like a decade, Sam Hartman, and he showed why he was in college for a decade, why he won't go to the NFL, because you know he doesn't have a chance at the NFL. That's why he stayed in college so damn long. I would be shocked if we won a national championship. I'll just put it that way. Shocked. We'll be in the mix. We can't beat Georgia. We can't beat Alabama. We can beat Ohio State. I'm not sure we can beat Michigan right now. You lose Jim Harbaugh, you lose some of those recruits, maybe you come back down to earth and maybe we can beat y'all too. But we don't have the athletes to beat a powerhouse SEC school. I can tell you that right now. We don't want the smoke. Rick, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Who writes, Jim Harbaugh and Jaden Daniels equals NFC Ravens. Yeah, yeah. Because you know Harbaugh's going to come in and want to run the football. Jaden Daniels, he's not Lamar Jackson. So that's not a great comparison. But I know what you're saying. He's an athlete, a guy that you can use in that similar vein, right? In an offense that's run dominant with a quarterback with some wheels that can make some throws. Yeah. I could see where you're going with that. That's what Harbaugh's, if you remember, that was Harbaugh's formula in San Francisco. Frank Gore in the run game. Great defense with Patrick Willis, Navarro Bowman, Justin Smith, Aldon Smith, and company, right? And then Colin Kaepernick utilizing his legs. That was the formula. So you could duplicate that if you did that. But again, that's not going to be the case. They're not going to duplicate that. Because if he goes to the Chargers, they already got a quarterback. His name's Justin Herbert. If he goes to the Raiders, then we can have a conversation about that. He need to first get his hands on a guy like Jaden Daniels, though. Or he can go to the Raiders and bring J.J. McCarthy with him. He said he's the greatest quarterback in Michigan history, right? I'm not saying, I'm just saying. Frankie, Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Double up. Thank you for doubling up. Who writes, best Michigan lineman wasn't even on the field tonight. Zach Zinter is a bigger, stronger, faster Keegan. I want him in a Commander's uniform desperately. Was that the guy that was on crutches for the coin toss or no? I thought I saw a guy that was hurt against Alabama that was on the sidelines. So not the big black dude that came up on the coin toss, but another dude that they said, hey, this guy's really good, but he's out. That's probably who you're talking about. That's exact. That I'm not even guessing. I know that's who you're talking about. I know that's who you're talking about. Keegan, he's huge. That was number 66, right? The dude that was out there at the coin toss. I remember me and my dad were watching the Alabama game. We said, God damn, that dude is huge. King of the Bluegrass. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Who writes, so, Lou, the jury is in on Penix and Jaden. And if May isn't your guy either, what do you do with the number 2 pick? I say hashtag NHO. What says you? Again, if I don't love any of them, I've already told you if I don't love them, I wouldn't take them, but it's not up to me, right? It's not my choice. But if I don't love one of these dudes, I wouldn't take them. You got to love one of these guys. And when I say love a quarterback, you got to love everything about him. The intangibles, his leadership qualities, the way he carries himself, how his teammates respond to him. Does he have toughness? You know, you're going to get hit. Can you withstand hits? Can you stand in the pocket, be tough? Obviously, the measurables, can you spin it? Athleticism, all of that stuff. Like, I'm looking at every single component. You may not love every single thing about that quarterback, but do you love enough to feel like, hey, this is the guy? All right, we can win a Super Bowl with this dude. If the answer is yes, take him. Take him. If the answer is no or I'm not sure, you could still take a I'm not sure. If the answer is no, don't take him. If the answer is I'm not sure, but you might be able to, you can take a chance on a guy like that if everything else checks out. But you want to be sure at number 2. You want to be sure. And there's no guarantees in this thing. We see it all the time. We see it every time there's a draft with 5 quarterbacks going in the first round. We had it in 2018. How many of those dudes turned out to be any good? Baker's trying to have a resurgence. He's going to the playoffs. We'll see how he does. He's all kinds of banged up right now, but we'll see if he can win a playoff game again for the Bucs. Sam Darnold is a backup now, a career backup now. Josh Rosen is out of the league. Josh Allen is legitimately one of the best quarterbacks in football, and so is Lamar Jackson. So 2.5 out of 5 guys that went in the first round in 2018. 2021, 5 guys went in the first round. Let's take a look at where they are right now. Trevor Lawrence just missed the playoffs, and you could argue regressed from his 2022 campaign, but he dealt with injuries and things of that nature this year. But, we'll see what happens. Still think he's a good quarterback. Zach Wilson won't be on the Jets next year and has stunk in his career thus far. Trey Lance can't even get on the field at this point of his career, and he's dealt with a myriad of injuries as well. But when he has played, he hasn't looked all that special. Mac Jones is on his way out of New England here shortly. And Justin Fields, he's the biggest enigma of the offseason. He's the biggest question of the offseason. He holds all the keys to what happens this season in the draft, this offseason rather, in the draft. They keep him. Somebody else is coming up to get Caleb Williams. If they move on from him, somebody's going to get Justin Fields, and the Bears are going to get Caleb Williams. So he holds all the keys in terms of the dominoes as far as those falling in this offseason. So, again, this could be one of those drafts where 3, 4, 5 guys go in the first round. Only 1 or 2 of them are probably going to turn out to be any good. You got to hope you get one of them. Usually the guy that goes first overall is one of the guys that ends up being good. That wasn't the case of 2018, right? He's the half of that group. You can never be sure about these things. So we'll see. 4 quarterbacks went in the first round in 2020. All 4 of them look to be really good. That's the hope this year, right? Is that you get a draft like that where Jordan Love, Tua Tagovailoa, Justin Herbert, and Joe Burrow all went in the first round. All of them look like guys that can play in this league at a very high level. Tua would be last right now for me in terms of upside. But you just never know. You get this high, you want to take a guy. That's usually how it goes. You get this high, you want to take a guy. Benjamin Slade, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Benjamin writes, we can't trade next year's one. It can be top 5 with a rookie QB. We have to stand pat. If you think the guy that you're going after is the guy, you don't care about next year's first round pick. You don't care where that ends up. In your mind, when people trade picks out into the future, you're thinking in your mind, hey, we're going to be good anyway. That's going to end up being the 30th, 31st, or 32nd pick. Who gives a shit about that? Nobody says, hey, let's not trade next year's one because we're probably going to suck ass and that's going to be a top 5 pick. Nobody thinks like that. If you see something and you want it and you want to go get it and you believe in that player, you go get that guy and you deal with the repercussions later. That's how this works. Because in your mind, what's stopping us from being 11-6 next year, a playoff team, and getting into the divisional round and being the 24th, 25th pick overall? They can have that. If I got my guy, they can have the 25th pick in the draft. Yeah, it sucks when you turn into Robert Griffin III and you thinking, hey, these picks ain't going to be shit anyway. We turn around and we win the division. And that first year, the picks weren't all that. That next year, though, that shit hurt. That 2013 pick, or the 2014 pick, rather. That shit hurt. That was the number 2 overall pick in the draft, bro. Now, they effed it up and took Greg Robinson with it, so it really didn't hurt as much. But still, who wants to give that away? The Panthers literally just gave away the number 1 overall pick in the draft. You don't think that shit stings? Especially if Bryce Young turns out to be ass? Of course it does. If Bryce Young turns out to be a monster for them, it'll be all worth it. It'll be all worth it. It's only if he turns out to be mid or trash where they'd be like, and we gave away the number 1 overall pick. Twice. Rick, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Rick writes, double up. Thank you for doubling up first and foremost. Who writes, Jaden might go 1 or 2 in the draft after the combine. I think a lot of fans, more so than evaluators, put stock into the draft, put stock into the combine. Pro days and the combine is more so for your medical. And it's for other players that maybe you haven't seen up close and personal, guys that you weren't as familiar with. They have a chance to shine and make you go back and do more work, right? For a player like Jaden Daniels, who probably won't even, who might or might not throw at the combine, who may or may not run at the combine, that shit ain't gonna do nothing for his draft stock. What's gonna help him is what he does in the interviews, when they get to know him, when they meet with him. You know, from all reports, I've heard that this dude is an A1 class act dude, like the type of kid you want to lead your team. Like, that's where he's going to shine. That's where he's got a chance to win over some teams. And I heard he's got that Eli Manning, Sam Howell type of demeanor where it's a next play mentality. He's not rattled very easily, kind of calm, no matter what kind of chaos is going on around him. That's the kind of shit that teams look for, right? That Jalen Hurts type of mentality. Hey, let's get him on the next one. So that's where he's going to have a shot, from if what I'm hearing is accurate. But the body of work speaks for itself on tape. Like, what you do as a quarterback, you might wow one or two people in person when you spin it and they get to see you do it live and they're like, oh, it jumps off of his hands. I didn't see that on tape. That might change a mind or two, but bro, trust me, they're going off the tape at this point. There's little you can do to change their mind from an on-the-field perspective. Now I want to know what you know from a football perspective, X's and O's wise. If I put you on the whiteboard, what do you retain? How well do you know the game? And how personable are you? Are you a leader? Are you a guy that I can trust in my locker room to lead these men? Are you the face of a franchise? That's the kind of stuff that's going to, win a team over this time of the year. Not running a 40 or throwing it 80 yards. Will Levis had a hell of a combine. Still went in the second round because the tape wasn't great. Teddy Bridgewater had the worst pro day ever known to mankind. Still went in the first round because the tape was great. Now, he went 32nd overall, but still went in the first round. Somebody still thought highly enough of him to go in the first round. So, anyway, he's not – I can't say that he won't go 1 or 2. But if he does, it won't be because of the combine. I'll tell you that right now. Rick, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. What are we doing here, Rick? What are we doing here? I'll say this. I would like a taller quarterback. I would like a 6'4", 6'5" guy, a dude. I'd settle for Caleb Williams at 6 feet. I'd settle for another 6-footer though in a heartbeat if he's a playmaker. But I would just for once have one of these bigger quarterbacks that actually can sling it. Anyway. Okay, I see what you're doing now, but still a little sketchy though, right? That's still a sketchy comment, but I see what you're saying. You're a size queen for quarterbacks. You like your quarterbacks taller. There are better ways to describe that, okay? There are better ways that you can put that, but I get it. Drake May's 6'3", 6'4", he's in that same conversation. I think they have similar builds, even though I think Drake May's probably a little skinnier, but Jaden Daniels isn't a big dude either, right? So these are taller quarterbacks, but they don't really have girth, as I like to say. Pause. Anyway, I digress, man. That's going to do it for me, your man Louie T, here on the recap of the national championship game between the Washington Huskies and the Michigan Wolverines. Game got away from Washington at the end. This was a 20-13 game at the end, midway through the fourth quarter. and it got away from Washington at that point. But they just never got into a rhythm offensively. Penix, I think the play that encapsulates Penix's night is the first fourth down that they went for it. And you got a Dunze wide ass open down the field on a 4th and 7, and he just misses him. And at that point, you probably should have known it ain't gonna be his night, because he was hitting that throw in his sleep last week against Texas with his eyes closed. I mean, the man was feeling it so much, they blitzed him. He threw a goal ball and did a spin move after he threw it. He was in his bag last week. That swag wasn't there tonight. They got to him early. They got in his head. And this game was big, and he knew it, and he felt the pressure, and you could tell. You could tell. Did this do some damage to his stock? Yeah, I think it less like serious critical damage. I think what it did was it brought his momentum to a screeching halt. He was on a crash course for the first round. We were talking about where in the first round. Now they bring that to a screeching halt. Matter of fact, bring it back. Think he might be finding his way back into the second round now. Late first, early second. I can still see him going in the first round, though. Again, all it takes is one team to say, hey, we cool on the medicals. We don't see any issues here. We good. And we like this kid, and we think he can play. I can see the Falcons saying, to hell with that shit you talking about. We'll take him at 8. Because if you look at the Falcons roster, sure, they could use some stuff, but it ain't a damn thing they need at 8 that they can't get at 48. Right? It ain't a damn thing they need. They got a number 1 receiver. They got a stud tight end. They got a dynamic back. They've been spending draft capital on offensive linemen for years. They could use the edge rusher. We'll get one of them shits in the second round. To hell with that. They need a quarterback. So it ain't a damn thing you can tell the Atlanta Falcons that might stop them from taking a quarterback. A damn thing you can tell them is they need a signal caller. So I don't know. We'll see what happens. Anyway, I digress. Y'all get out of here. Enjoy the rest of your evening. If you ain't doing nothing, hit me up tomorrow. We got the Louie T Network podcast tomorrow. I think, I don't know. We might not have a podcast. Now I'm thinking, I think my son's going to be home with me tomorrow. So I don't think we're going to have the Louie T. If I can sneak a podcast in, I will. If not, it'll be Wednesday. But you will be getting the NFC Super Friends tomorrow, for sure. So be on the lookout for that. In any event, y'all have a good one. Y'all take care. God bless and good night. And congratulations to the Michigan Wolverines for ending a drought of a national championship that has spanned over a quarter of a century. Congratulations to the Michigan Wolverines, Jim Harbaugh, and that university. Well-deserved 15-0 season, first in program history. Celebrate! Y'all earned it. Peace.